if you have ever had any sort of player frustrations around playing time, if you have parent frustrations around playing time, if you have a coach who's been like, your role in my eyes is very clear, but for some reason, you are not seeing your role the same way, and all these frustrations are coming. And then now we're having like some side conversations, and then it turns into a big thing, all because of playing time, then this is for you. So we're going to talk today about the simple solution to avoid this starter non-starter divide that can happen on your team, how to get your players to accept their role, which sometimes is easier said than done, and the team roles and impact plan. So this is what I started implementing to help my players really understand, grasp their role, accept their role, and love their role on their team. Okay, so let's talk about how we can make things a little bit easier. I am Bre, if I have not met you. I'm the co-founder of the Elite Competitor. I am also a head volleyball coach. So I've been coaching for 14 years. I'm here in Washington State. Most playing time issues can be solved with improved. This is in your playbook if you're following along, but what do we think it is? We all know improved communication. And the thing is, early on in my coaching career, I thought I was a really good communicator. I was like, it's making sense to me, only to find out that when you'd have like a player meeting or a parent meeting, and you're like, wait, that's how you interpreted that? That's what you thought I said, or what you thought I meant by that? Only to be like, oh my gosh, okay, we've got to like get back to square one. But when athletes don't know their role and it's not clearly communicated to them, they create stories in their head. Okay. How many of you have had an athlete who has created a story because, and when you look back, you're like, oh, it's because they didn't have that communication. They didn't actually know. So they created some sort of story around like, the reason I'm not playing is because my coach doesn't like me. Right? Or my coach, plays favorites, or this person is playing because whatever. And you're like, what? How did that become the story in your head? Yeah, exactly. And they don't have the confidence. Yeah, exactly, Julie. We're gonna talk about that kind of at the end. But here's the thing. Our brain needs a story. Our brain does not like to just be in this limbo land of like not really understanding things. So it will create a story. This happens to us too, to justify whatever is happening, even if that story is not true. And so this is typically what happens, is that athletes are not clearly communicated their role. They're expecting in their mind to get a certain amount of playing time, or have a certain role. And then maybe it's not happening how they're anticipating it. Now they're going to create a story in their head as to why that's happening. And the thing about our brains is, when we start to create these stories, when we get that thought into our head, it's going to find everything in our environment to prove that to be true. That's part of our brain called the reticular activating system. Okay. That's going to affirm all of these things. So like, yeah, my coach doesn't like me. And now that player who has that thought is finding everything in her environment to support that thought. So it's like, oh yeah, I saw my coach, talking more to that player. I saw this, I saw that. See, my coach really doesn't like me. Okay. And so that is typically what happens. Okay. And I used to think that players knew their role without me having to tell them. I thought it was crystal clear. And for some of you are like, well, it kind of is. Okay. But I'm like, well, this girl is a returner. She is a starter. She clearly has the best performance. And so she is going to play that role. You are you're a freshman, and you're, these are your stats. You're behind here. You're a backup setter. You are a situational sub. You're a serving sub. In my mind, I'm like, this is all very clear because this is like what you are demonstrating, what you're showing. Okay. But then I started to notice a lot of frustration. Okay. A lot of like little side conversations. I would get like, as sometimes we do, get some notes from parents and like, just, hey, I'm just wondering. Hey, coach, you got a couple minutes? I'm just wondering. Okay. Players checking out a little bit. I had players who like, they're playing roles, and even this is even after maybe you even told them what their role is, and now they're just checked out if it's not like the role they expected, and now they're like just not really in it for practice. Okay, or maybe they're not even showing up for practice. Okay, so if you got that going on, then you're starting to notice, I wonder what's going on here. Okay, I started to notice that what was obvious to me was not obvious to them. Okay, ultimately that is what it boiled down to. All right. Brene Brown, we're going to bring her in again. It says, clear is kind. Clear is kind. And Part of this role clarity is about being very, very clear on what the role is, what the expectations are. And we're going to go through the whole process of this, okay? And how to really be intentional with it so that you are demonstrating that kindness. It's not kind to leave players in the dark on what their role is, even if you're like, I don't really know what their role is yet, or it's changing from week to week. That leaves athletes in this state of like confusion, making up stories, increases their anxiety around it. Okay. So, in order to kind of muddle through all of these stories that they're creating, we have to create some clarity for them. Okay. This hit me hard. Okay. This quote right here. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And sometimes even when you're like, I have communicated and there's still some gaps that are happening. Okay. Now I'm curious before I get into the role clarity and the impact plan. How do you currently communicate roles to your athletes? Just put that in the chat. Let's learn from each other for a second. And if you're like, I don't, that's okay. Join the club. That's how I was. I was like, yeah, well, you'll find out the the day of the match, when I put in the starting lineup, that's how you're going to know. Okay. All right. One-on-ones. Hey, Ferris family. All right. So one-on-ones. Yeah, for sure. Anyone else have like a way that they currently communicate roles? Yeah. So the importance of the bench player, always having a role to execute. Okay. That's really important. Postseason conferences, talk about the next season. Yeah, maybe I should do post and preseason. Okay, I'm gonna give you something to think about, Caitlin. Speak to them one-on-one, try and show their areas for improvement. Good. Team meeting and discuss roles for the good of the team. I love that. Select team, I give them a piece of paper describing their role. Yet it could change depending on them. Yeah, so that's actually very clear. It's like, here's your piece of paper. It says it right there. There's no room for like misinterpretation, right? Roles can change daily if needed. Preseason meetings about where we see the athlete. Good. Post lineups for each tourney on our shared text. Okay. Oh yeah, track and cross country might be a little different, but it's explain that if I have entry limits for some meets, what those criteria are. Good. So Danny, you had like that criteria, and communication still is something. What I'm about to talk to will still apply to cross country and track. Everyone has the same status, but we have different roles. Okay. Ask the girls to identify where they see themselves. That's good. Some self-reflection. Okay. I love this. All right, let's talk about the role clarity blueprint. And it sounds like a lot of you are doing some pieces of this already, which is great. I also hope that as you're going through the boot camp, you're being affirmed as a coach as well. You're picking up new things, easy things that you can put into practice, but you're also being affirmed that like, okay, yeah, like there are pieces that I am doing in my program that are really serving my athletes and I'm on the right track, okay? All right, this is how we in our program have eliminated confusion, improved in communication, and build buy-in. I mentioned yesterday, I had 2 girls quit my team, okay, 3 years ago. And that was devastating to me as a coach because I've always had this in my head, like, you should never be a player's last coach. And while there's a lot to be said about some of the decisions that they made that led up to, like, it's always a combination of things. I still at that point was like, I've got to reflect as a coach because 2 of these players were in those role player situations. Okay. They were players who were backups, but they were upperclassmen, but they were behind the players who were ahead of them. And we were just coming off a state championship. We won another state championship that season, and they quit afterwards. It was kind of a buddy thing. They're like, we're going to do this together. But still, what I realized was that even though I had communicated their role to them one time at the beginning of the season, they did not really buy into their role. They didn't like their role, and I didn't really do a good job of scaffolding and showing them that the importance of that role. Okay. And so, yeah, I know it's not always us. I too get it. Like there's a lot to it, but it still was like, I've never at that point, 12 years had anyone like quit. And so, yeah, it was pretty devastating. So, yeah, so this is one of the things that we changed. Preseason. I like that some of you are like, okay, yeah, we've got a preseason meeting. Now, when I say preseason, that means that our season has already started, but we haven't maybe started league games yet. So this is like, we've got jamborees, we're practicing, I'm still able to evaluate my players. But in preseason, you need as a coach to define and set the expectations for the roles on your team. And that's going to be one of your challenges today. Like one of your actions for today is come up with like, what are the actual roles on your team and be as specific as possible. Okay. What are they? So we have like the obvious ones, like you are a starter for I'm going to use volleyball terms right now, but like you're a six rotation player, you're a front row player, you're a back row player, you are a situational sub. And what is that situation, right? Are you a blocking sub? Are you a serving sub? Are you a, what is it? And what is the purpose of that role? Okay. And yeah, and maybe the role is you are a player who is probably not going to see the court very much. And also, in what games might they see some court time, and what games will they probably not? What's their role in practice? Take time as a coach to really explain this out, like write this out for yourself so that you know, and slapping some role on like you are a bench player and your job is to cheer. I want you to reevaluate that. Okay. Because that used to be like, yeah, that's a valuable role. You're a bench player and you're going to cheer. That's not really a valuable role. Okay. Yes, you can argue that like, it's great for the camaraderie of the team, but when you have an athlete who's like, yep, that's my role. I'm a bench player and I'm a cheerleader. It's kind of demotivating. So come up with a better player. Put in the chat if you have some ideas on that. Some other things that I've heard, like you're a game changer. You are the person in practice who is going to be pushing our team to make us better. All of that. Yeah, team manager is kind of another layer of that. So team manager typically in my role chart would be like you're not playing, okay? But how do you see the role evolving? Okay? So these are kind of the things that you need to first set up for yourself as a coach. And then what we do, so we kind of are evaluating in that first like preseason time. I send my players a Google form, okay, with some questions on it that help them reflect a little bit on what they see their role is, what their goals are for this season, what's their like non-volleyball related goal. I ask them kind of a series of questions. I get the responses from that, and then I put together what's called an impact plan. Okay. And an impact plan for them is a written document. I take the responses and I put this all onto a Google Doc for them. And I talk about, okay, here is what your role is as I see it. Here is how much playing time is associated with that role. Here's what the purpose of this role is and why we have this role on our team. Here's where I see you evolving. Here's where you need to improve. Here's where what your strengths are. Okay. So there's that whole document. Then we do have one-on-one meetings at the beginning of the season. These meetings are a little bit longer, but we do bake them into preseason, and I make sure that these are done before our first league meeting. And here's a kicker. Share this document with their parents. Okay. So and I talk about this in the parent meeting, that they're going to get their impact plan for the season. And I literally, because it's a Google Doc, I just share away with their parents. And I'm like, this is Susie's impact plan for the 2025 season, so that the parents can see very clearly, this is what the role of your athlete is. This is what playing time looks like for that role. This is what the expectations are for that role. Here's where her strengths are. Here are her areas of improvement. Okay. This has changed. I get parents email me back and they're like, thank you so much for for including us in this conversation. Sometimes I know that parents are a whole nother topic that we can talk about in Q&A, but like, I used to think parents know, like, you cannot talk to me. It's a coach's decision. No arguing. And yeah, I'm not inviting any feedback on this. I am sharing with them, like, this is the role of your athlete this season. The other thing that I learned from Rob Dunphy, if anyone knows the volleyball world, is this: at the end of those impact meetings, we say, this is your role as I see it. Do you accept your role? Okay. And so, yeah, athletes might say, I haven't had anyone say no yet. Okay. And so whether they actually accept it is another story, but it just makes it very clear that this is where we see you right now. Okay. So that happens kind of preseason. They have their impact plan. Hey, during season, this is the time to reinforce and adjust. Check-ins with players. A lot of you say you do this. We do this on a bi-weekly basis, meaning every other week, we do 5-minute check-ins with players. The way that our program is structured is that we do these check-ins like during very quickly during when like the C team or JV is playing. So before the varsity match, we pull one player at a time. We do three meetings. So it's 15 minutes, and then I can jump into the JV match and jump into the C team match. Okay. And so I check in with players. It's an opportunity for me to tell them, like, how they're progressing in their role, what we see, all of that. It's an opportunity for them to ask any questions. And a lot of times it's like, wow, gosh, it's so much more time. I'm like, these 5-minute meetings have saved our culture. They really have, because when athletes have questions that don't get answered, again, they make up stories that typically aren't true. And now they're venting to other players, they're venting to their parents, they're creating more and more and more stories. These check-ins have just really allowed us to, take care of problems before they become big. Okay, reaffirm and adjust. And here's the key thing during season. Hey, practice equity, rep equity is really important. And I know, like, if you do, well, I think this applies actually to like the individual team sports, so like cross country swimming and track and field and all that. But um, are you giving equal opportunities to your non-starters? Or are you always doing starters versus non-starters? Okay, we really have increased the overall level of our competitiveness in our gym by mixing up players and being really intentional. We use the competitive cauldron in our program, and so all players are numbered. All players have different groupings. Every single week, players are playing with and against every player, so that it doesn't become this more of this divide. And also paying attention to, as a coach, your feedback. Are you just giving feedback only to your starters? And if you're like, no, heck no, I would never do that. If you really like, if you were to mic yourself up and listen to like your feedback and actually like analyze yourself as a coach, I found that for me, I was giving more feedback to my starters. You're just more gravitated to those players. And you just have to be really aware of what kind of practice equity do you have? What kind of feedback equity do you have, and rep equity? Recognizing and rewarding. I think this probably is something you all probably do, but if you do any sort of player of the week at the end of the week, let's recognize based on character traits that anyone can be eligible for, not just like people who had great games that week. Okay. Share stories. Okay. Oh yeah, Kat, I hear you. Share stories of the importance of role players. I always share my story at the beginning of the season. Maybe you don't have a story like this, but maybe you've had this at the in your program that you've seen. But when I was in college, I was a walk-on to start, and for the first like 3 years of my career, I was a blocking sub, meaning I would go in maybe for one play, block, maybe not, and then I would come out. That was my role, and my coach clearly communicated that role to me at the beginning. She's like, "This is your role, as I see it, and your job is to like be the best blocking sub that you can be, and your role is also to make us better in practice." And one of the years, I don't remember which one, but we made it to the Elite Eight. And after the season, in our one-on-one meeting, my coach was like, "We made it this far, in part because of you." And I was like, "That makes no sense, because I'm a blocking step. I don't even think I played in that match." And she goes, "Because you work so hard at practice and you push our team so much that the players that we have out there and the unit that we have out there, they are already seeing better competition than what they see in our conference play." Something to along lines of that. But anyways, I ate it all up. I was like, oh, it put this into perspective that my role was important. I was contributing to the team in a way that was meaningful, and that my coach recognized and my coach saw. So find a way to like share stories like that to make sure that all roles have equal value. Okay, postseason. Reflect and plan. So a lot of you are like, yeah, we do preseason, we do postseason. Okay, so this one's pretty self-explanatory, but assess how they fulfilled their role, potential role and action plan for next year. Okay, and always like referring back to that impact plan that you shared with their parents on like, okay, here's how you're progressing and here's where we see it. And sometimes you just have to have those tough conversations with some of these athletes who are like, you know what, this is the lay of the land. Like this is what you need to do, but also we have players who are returning who are also putting in the work. So we just have to be clear about that. Remember, clear is kind. Okay. Put in the chat, what part of this blueprint do you already do well? Are you like, I'm already doing this pretty well. And which part can you improve? Okay. Which part are you like, this is, yeah, I think we've got pieces of that, but which part are you like, ooh, I could actually serve to have more practice equity, or an impact plan would actually be really useful, like in writing that I'm sharing with parents. Yeah, Kimberly, can prove all of it. Great. Like that. I hope that it's useful to be able to do. Okay, Danny, I'm reading your comment. Yeah. Setup times. Impact plan implementation, speaking to the non-starters more, share with parents. Yeah, assessment at the end. Yeah, I agree. I don't mind having tough conversations, but it's a lot easier if they're aware up front rather than trying to like not justify is the right word, but like have those conversations that are like tough. A lot of them can be avoided if it's like, yeah, here's what it is. Because sometimes we also cannot assume that our athletes are sharing anything with their parents. Anyone that have a teen, anyone a parent of a teen in the group, okay, like there's not a lot that comes back. And so, yeah, exactly. You're like, wait, what did coach say? And you're like, I don't know, I don't remember. Or like they said they hang on to like one little thing and they're like, wait, is that really? So yeah. Okay, we got some questions here. Do you share with them the schedule of your planned biweekly meetings? Yes, Carly, I do. So we just have like a schedule and yep, we go on Tuesday, 1, 2, 3. No, we go by jersey number 1, 2, 3, Thursday, 4, 5, 6, and then the next week, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Sounds like, yeah, we've got some pieces that you're already applying and then some things that we can improve. Now, as a reminder, maybe you're hearing this for the first time, less drama around this happens when our athletes actually know how to shift what they're saying to themselves in their head. So you can actually do all of the things, right? You can have the preseason meeting. You can be very clear about what the role is. You can assess their performance. You can make sure that you are praising them and recognizing them and all the things. And yet, still, you can have athletes who are saying negative things to themselves in their heads and tearing themselves down or making up stories that you don't like them. Okay. And so that is why we're going to really talk about this on day 4. Day 4 is really where it comes together, where it comes to mental training. Because athletes, if they're not aware that they're sabotaging themselves with these thoughts that they have in their head, this is kind of how it works. So we've talked about this situation. I'm going to lean into the situation of, because typically in my program, it's been had the hardest time with the athletes who don't hold those starting roles, right? And so the situation happens where maybe they're not getting the playing time that they want. And so that thought is, my coach hates me. Thoughts lead to feelings. Okay. This is one of the key foundational things that we actually teach athletes inside our plug and play program. Okay. Our mental training program for athletes. Thoughts lead to feelings. So if they're thinking my coach doesn't like me, I don't really serve a purpose on this team, they're probably not going to be feeling very motivated to come to practice. And if they do, when they do, they're just not feeling like their best. Okay. Feelings lead to actions. So if they're feeling that way, they're probably not going to be giving 100% effort in practice. They might even be avoiding you a little bit because they're like, well, if my coach doesn't like me, I don't really want to like be around them. They're not going to give 100%. They're just not going to actually be playing their best. Okay. If they're hanging on to that thought of like, my coach doesn't like me and what's my purpose here? Okay. What results are they going to get? So these players who do make a big impact on your team, who you need, right, on your team, are now like not getting better. They're not making your team better. They're not making the athletes around them better. And now they're back in this situation, not getting the playing time, being frustrated, potentially starting fires on your team, okay, and tearing your team apart. And now you're like, why are we not playing how we know how to play? And a lot of times it stems from this. Now, here's what can happen if your athletes have this skill of being able to notice that their self-talk is not productive and they can shift it on their own. Okay. So even if they do get hard feedback from you and they're like, okay, I'm not in the role that I want. Instead of going down this bunny trail of like, I suck, my coach doesn't like me, why is she playing over me? Instead of like following those thoughts down the bunny trail, okay, now she can actually be like, okay, yes, I'm not maybe happy with my role, but there's an opportunity here. This is hard, but I can do hard things. Okay. I'm going to earn my opportunities and I'm going to accept my role. What feelings come from thoughts like that? She's probably going to feel a little more motivated. When my coach told me, and I was able to really like buy into this idea of like, yeah, my role does serve a purpose. I'm feeling motivated. She's going to practice feeling those feelings. She's probably going to be playing a little bit harder for you. She's probably going to be working on things maybe outside of practice. She's going to be watching film, like all of those little things that athletes do when they are motivated and they want to be there. What results is she going to get? Okay, that athlete is probably going to be making your team better. Your morale on your team is going to be improved. She's going to be improving. Okay, she might still be, in a non-starting role, but your team chemistry is going to be a lot better. Okay, she's going to be improving. She's going to make everybody else better because she had this skill of being able to recognize when her thoughts are not serving her and shifting them. This is a key mental training skill that we teach athletes. And again, we'll dive into it on day 4. But the analogy really quick before we wrap up that I want to give about this, and this is what we tell athletes too, is the smoothie analogy. Okay. Any moms that have been on our training recognize this, put a yes if you're like, yep, I've heard it. So I make a smoothie almost every day. I'm on this like peanut butter chocolate smoothie kick. And when you finish, anyone else drink a smoothie every day? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Julie, when I'm done with it, right? You know how when you finish a smoothie, there's like that smoothie remnant on the inside of the glass. Okay. Now, when you rinse that off right away, you go to the sink. So I like take my smoothie glass, rinse it out, and like, no big deal. I'm just going on with my day. Okay. I don't even think anything about it. Okay. But what happens when I drink that smoothie, the smoothie remnant stays in there, and then I forget about it, or I'm sitting here on a training. Okay. And now that smoothie stuff gets just like hardened on the inside of the glass. It's like that chia seed turns into like concrete or cement, whatever. I always confuse the two. Okay. And it's really hard to get off, right? Now I have to like soak it in the sink. It's got to sit there a while. I got to like scrub it, all the things. Okay. That is the same thing that happens when your athletes have a thought that is not serving them. I suck. My coach doesn't like me. What's my point here? Okay. But then they're like, not productive. I know how important self-talk is. I'm going to shift that. That's like them cleaning out their glass or their cereal bowl right away and moving on. Okay. But when they don't, when they're like, nope, this is what I'm going to stick to. Okay. That's like that smoothie getting harder and harder. That thought gets deeper and deeper into their subconscious. And now that thought is no longer a thought. It's a belief that they're carrying around about themselves. My coach doesn't like me. I suck. I'm not good enough to be here. Okay. And when athletes have beliefs about themselves like that, you know how hard it is as a coach to change. You're like, oh my gosh, you don't need to believe that's about yourself. But they're like, no, it's just who I am. And now they're carrying that from team to team. So you're like, they've had past trauma from other coaches. Like now they're carrying around that belief about themselves. But if we can teach athletes to shift thoughts before they turn into these beliefs that live in their subconscious that control every single, 90% of what they do, that is powerful. Okay. So yeah, you can do all the things to set up, like, here's what your role is, here's what your impact is, here's where we see you. But without the mental training of them being able to, you can't be in their head. Okay. So they need the skill of being able to be aware of like, is that thought serving me? Is this story serving me? Is this actually accurate? And can we shift it to something new? And those are the type of things that we teach in our plug and play program for teams. And we're going to be talking about that all on day 4, kind of where it clicks. Okay. Yeah. Some of you relate to the smoothie and the cereal things. Okay. Your action for day number 2. We kind of have already talked about this a little bit. What are the identified roles on your team? So you can just have a kind of a rough draft of like, what are the roles? Okay. And then learn from each other. So as other coaches are posting what their roles are, you're like, oh, that's a good role. Or like maybe they have a clever name for the role. Okay. And how do you plan to share player roles with your team? That is your action. You are going to be commenting on today's YouTube video for that. And I'm going to show you real quick some housekeeping things. Mackenzie, yeah, we'll talk about that on day 4. Yeah, the Google form and everything. Yeah, let me get back to you on that. But yes. Okay. I'm going to walk you through our welcome page where you can find everything just to make sure that you are all good to go. So when you go to this welcome page, this is like the one-stop shop. Abby just put a clickable link in there. If you haven't already added all of the bootcamp dates to your calendar, you can just click that link and it'll sync to your Google or your iCal, whatever you have. If you haven't already followed our YouTube channel, make sure that you do that because that is where you're going to be commenting for today's action. And I'm actually going to pick somebody for another coffee winner in a second. Your additional bonuses. So we threw in this Mind Care weekly check-in for you to use. That's a Google form that you can download. And then we have a live Q&A that you can add to the calendar. Also, anyone earning raffle tickets? Okay. I think we've had like 200 and something entries. So you are earning them, but we are doing a raffle for our Coach Survival Kit that includes an Amazon gift card, Lululemon gift card, Starbucks gift card, and the book Wolfpack by Abby Wambach. And so we are drawing for that winner on Monday, actually. So earn all the raffle tickets that you can by doing little quick things. And then if you want to grab this peak performance visualization bundle, that's there for you too. Just some visualizations that you can use with your team. Okay, here's our daily schedule. All right. We already went through 1. We just got done with 2. Tomorrow we're doing leadership core. So my system on how to develop leaders is a really cool thing that we started implementing like 4 years ago that really helps leaders like own their role, know their role as a leader, and then a really simple way that they can actually be like actually leading their team and not just being like, oh, I'm the captain, I'm going to do the coin flip. Okay. So that's tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm also hopping on right before our visualization to do a behind the scenes of plug and play elite mental game for teams. So the plug and play elite mental game for teams is our plug and play program for coaches to implement mental training with their teams really easily. So you get your team together, you press play on the videos. They're very short, between 3 and 20 minutes, 15 minutes long. You lead a short discussion afterwards, and that's how you've got your mental training implemented into your program. So I'll show you what it looks like from a coach perspective, like how does this actually work? How long does it take? What results do you get? Like all the things. So if you just want like a behind the scenes on what the program is, come to that. And also, if you're like, I think I want to apply for the scholarship for free access to it, come to that so you know what it's about as well. Okay. Day 4, we're going all over mental training and how to implement that. Okay. So that is your welcome page and where everything is located. If you're a note taker, you got your playbook here. And then there's another way to enter for some raffle tickets. Okay. All right, everybody. Make sure that you do your action plan. Oh yeah, I said I was going to, we're going to draw one more person for a free coffee because we love that. Let's go to our YouTube channel and see what's going on here. For day 1. Okay. Day 1. Let's see here. We had a lot of action here, which is great. Okay, day 1, coffee winner for yesterday's comments on our YouTube post is, let's see, Terry-P4C. And also I was reading like ringette. I had to look up what that was. That's very cool. Okay, so Terry, you have a free coffee on us as well. All right, everyone. I hope today was useful. You can join me later today for another visualization that we're doing at 12 Pacific, 2 Central, 3 Eastern. Tomorrow, like I said, we're talking about the leadership core. So how to develop players to actually lead. I'm really excited about sharing this, especially if you're like, they're captains, but they just, that's the extent of it. Okay. All right, everyone. I will see you in the comments of the YouTube post. That's where you can also post questions and get ideas from other coaches. But I will see you for our visualization and tomorrow for day 3. See you later.